Bonjour à toutes et à
Good afternoon. We have here the pleasure to continue our third conference for our day 2015 and for this edition. So we'll introduce to you the first results of the survey, Vapexpo fivape, which have been made by Dr. Christopher Russell, and this afternoon also Philippe Prel, doctor, but also coordinator of the Doctors in Favor of E-Cigarettes. Brice Poutre, who is president of ADIUS, and Professor Jean-François Etter, who is the global health teacher, professor in Geneva, in Geneva Faculty of Medicine. So we'll introduce the first results, which have been made on more than 2,500 persons. And very quickly, for the content, we have launched, together with Vapexpo, a survey at the end of July for 40 days in order to understand behaviors and feelings of vapers and their relationship with the risk reduction. So Christopher, you have the floor for this presentation that will follow, and then we'll have debate, discussion on the first results of this survey. You have the floor.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Christopher Russell. I'm a behavioural psychologist and I work at the Centre for Drug Misuse Research in Glasgow, Scotland. And unfortunately I'm the only English-speaking person up here, so I hope I speak slow enough for the translators and everything is understood and well received, obviously. The research that we conduct in Glasgow revolves around the question of how can we get more smokers to try an e-cigarette? People who are wanting to quit smoking, how can we persuade more smokers to give an e-cigarette a try? And I'll tell you why this question is important to me. So using WHO data, it's estimated that if all the tobacco control programs in the world were implemented fully and immediately as of 2010 through 2013, then the global prevalence of smoking would reduce from roughly 794 million smokers down to about 523 million smokers. So the question is, what do we do for the roughly 523 million smokers who aren't deterred by tobacco control measures and don't respond to professional assistance and peer encouragement to quit? And as I imagine many people in this room today have already discovered an approach that works for them, and that is persuading people who are not willing or able to quit smoking to use nicotine products that are substantially less toxic than inhaled tobacco smoke. Now, obviously, millions of individuals are now choosing to quit smoking, and hundreds of thousands are succeeding with the assistance of e-cigarettes and vaporizers. Hopefully many in this room at one point in time used to smoke, and now thanks to using e-cigarettes or combination of e-cigarettes, they no longer smoke, and that's fantastic. However, the potential for e-cigarettes to reduce tobacco-related harm has been limited so far because not enough smokers are likely to try switching to an e-cigarette soon due to one or more of a lack of awareness about e-cigarettes. Sorry? Okay, sure. Accessibility, information, and motivation. So the question, as I said, we are interested in is how can we persuade more smokers to give e-cigarettes a try? And beyond the level of regulation, in my opinion, the greatest opportunity we have to reduce tobacco-related harm is in connecting two groups of people. On one side, you've got a group of smokers who want to quit smoking. They're curious, maybe cautious, or contemplating using an e-cigarette as a way of quitting smoking. But before they make that switch or give an e-cigarette a try, they want to hear the stories and experiences of people who have quit or cut down their smoking by using an e-cigarette. It's perhaps only natural that they want to hear the testimonies of people who have been successful with an e-cigarette. before they take that jump themselves. On the other side, you have vapers who have quit smoking by using an e-cigarette, and they are passionate about telling people how they did it, especially people who they want to achieve what they themselves have achieved. The vapers, again, many people here today have amassed a wealth of information and personal experience of using an e-cigarette, and certainly a wealth of information that they can pass on to willing listeners, academics like myself, but more importantly, to people who smoke but aspire to quit. Specifically, what do smokers want from vapers? You here today can significantly increase the chance that a person will try an e-cigarette if you give them some of 5 things, which I'm calling AEIOU. First of all, smokers want advice. They want advice on where to start, how to start, and what to expect in the early stages of switching. They also want advice thereafter on how to keep vaping interesting, keep it fresh, and obviously to cope with temptations to go back to smoking. They also want encouragement. When people are positive about a person's ability to quit smoking and convey a self-belief, that person embodies that self-belief and becomes more likely to stick with it. A feeling of being in it together rather than going on this journey alone can, in many cases, determine who persists with an e-cigarette and who gives up in the early stages. No surprise, people want information, and perhaps the information they are most interested in is clarity about the risks and benefits of switching to e-cigarettes. They want to know how their health they can expect their health to change now in the future. And then they want more practical information about where they should buy, what they should buy, and how to maintain their device for optimal performance. They want opportunity, and this relates to the accessibility of products. Obviously here today you have no problem accessing any range of product you want, but soon, as of May 2016 next year, people who want to use certain e-cigarette products might not have access to those products once certain regulation comes in the EU. An opportunity, people just want to use the flavours that they want, the devices that they want, and to use it wherever they want, so long as they're not harming or irritating people nearby. And finally, people want understanding. They want understanding of the process they're about to go through. Quitting smoking is difficult, and they want people to understand why they think the way they think, why they feel the way they feel, and why they behave the way they do, and perhaps in the early stages of abstinence from smoking. And vapers who have been through that process of switching can give them that. So the study that we conducted in collaboration with fivape was an attempt to collect, summarise and communicate the views of experienced, successful vapers, to communicate this information to both smokers and those who are charged with regulating nicotine vapor products. People may have said to you that if you have quit smoking with an e-cigarette that you are just an anecdote, and that's a common sort of thing that's said about one person here, one person there. But the truth is, vaping anecdotes, when supplied by the thousand, become a reliable and credible source of information about the ways in which e-cigarettes have helped a variety of people from different backgrounds and circumstances to quit smoking. So we, our company and fivape, created a survey, an online survey, that assessed the views and experiences of successful vapers who have entirely quit smoking or who have significantly reduced their smoking since they started vaping regularly. And this survey was hosted at our website, which is actually incorrectly spelled, so don't go to that website. It was hosted there for just over 40 days. It should say nicotinesurveys.org. Our survey was completed by just under 2,600 individuals, the majority of whom currently use an e-cigarette every day. And the first step in our analysis was to establish the credibility and potential helpfulness of these respondents as informed and experienced advice givers. So first of all, we wanted to know how successful have these respondents been in quitting or reducing their smoking. So I'm just going to give some basic stats just to characterize the type of people who responded to our survey. So the majority of the respondents had taken a puff of a regular tobacco cigarette before they started vaping, and almost all were smoking regularly before they started vaping. So almost everyone who took our survey had previously smoked or was smoking at the point of their first vape. When you ask them then, at this point in time, they have the majority, roughly 80%, had quit smoking by the time they took the survey. So right away we're dealing with people who, and this is by no means a prevalence study. This is just people who want to contribute information. This is not I'm not saying 80% of smokers quit with an e-cigarette. I'm just saying of this sample, 80% of people quit. Which is good because we're looking for a sample of successful vapers, people who have used an e-cigarette to quit smoking. That's what we're looking for. To the respondents who are still smoking, so they were smoking and they're still smoking and still vaping, the majority, or just over half, had reduced their smoking, and to be specific, just under half had reduced their smoking by more than 50%. I'm just going to skip just a slide or two. We also had some non-smokers and some former smokers take the survey. The non-smokers, there was only 111 who took the survey, asked how many. So these are people who hadn't smoked a cigarette at the point that they started vaping, and we asked them, have you taken a puff of a tobacco cigarette since you started vaping? Roughly 65% had taken a puff of a cigarette since they started vaping, but as the row below, only 3% have progressed to regular smoking. So I'm sure everyone's sort of familiar with the gateway hypothesis. I'm not saying, again, this is a prevalence study. I'm just saying in our sample, progressing to regular cigarette smoking among non-smoking vapers was very low, very, very low. And among former smokers, only 2.5% indicated that they smoked a cigarette after they started vaping and after they quit smoking. So the idea that e-cigarettes may lure former smokers back into smoking, only 2.5% of 486 said that they actually resumed smoking after they had quit. So the next stage was to ask the people in our survey who had quit smoking and who had significantly reduced their smoking. We asked their views on a range of issues pertaining to regulation of e-cigarettes, advertising, media coverage, and then we asked them personally their reasons for vaping, for starting and continuing, the pleasures and benefits they get from vaping, the health changes they've experienced since they started vaping regularly, and advice that they would give to smokers who are considering using an e-cigarette as a way of quitting smoking. And just very, very quickly, as I mentioned at the start, the majority of these successful vapers use an e-cigarette every day. Most started to use an e-cigarette in 2013, and the modal sort of period of use is 1 to 2 years. So most people had been using certainly for less than 3 years, which is to be expected given the emergence of e-cigarettes. And the majority of people were using between 1 and 12 milligrams of nicotine in their liquids. So, to the question of how do these people think that nicotine vapor products should be regulated, the majority believe that nicotine vapor products should be regulated as they should either have their specific regulations for nicotine vapor products, or they should be regulated as general consumer products, foods and drinks and so on. And a very small minority believe that they should be regulated as tobacco products, as medicines. So, which is perhaps some of these results aren't surprising, and a lot of you will agree with a lot of these answers. But I'm just trying to demonstrate these are what sort of expert successful vapors think would be beneficial for the next generation of smoker come vapor. Should vaping be prohibited in social venues? The social venues being bars, restaurants, clubs. The majority believe that no, they shouldn't be prohibited, but there should be some exceptions, and those exceptions should be left up to the proprietor of the establishment, the bar owner, the club owner, the restaurant owner. But largely there shouldn't be a blanket ban on vaping in social venues. With regard to the workplace, again, majority of people believe that vaping shouldn't be prohibited in the workplace. Some of the follow-up answers we received indicated that they don't believe vaping should be banned in the workplace because most people tend to smoke, or they tended to smoke on their lunch breaks, and if they weren't able to vape on the premises or around the premises, they may themselves be tempted to start smoking again, away from the premises. And with regard to public places, it was an overwhelming no. Vaping should be banned in public places. With regard to advertising of e-cigarette products, do you believe that advertising e-cigarettes on TV, radio, billboards, magazines encourages smokers to switch by increasing awareness of the products and flavours and all the things that are available? The majority believe that yes, advertising products does encourage switching, but at the same time it doesn't encourage non-smokers to start using. So to the question of should advertising of e-cigarettes be prohibited on TV, radio, magazines and so on, an overwhelming no, it shouldn't. And an interesting perception of how vaping is talked about in the media, and I wonder how many of you are going to agree with this next slide. Do you agree that media stories about vaping are likely to either scare smokers away or encourage smokers to switch to vaping? And unfortunately, the majority of these successful vapors believe that the coverage of e-cigarettes in popular media is putting people off of switching. People who would otherwise think about e-cigarettes and ask questions or go into shops, certain stories may be scaring people away. So we asked people what words they would use to describe stories in the media about e-cigarettes. And this is largely what they said. So it's a shame that obviously going to the more positive words, positive, accurate, fair and balanced, that these successful vapors don't believe that that's how e-cigarettes are being discussed in the media. I myself wouldn't go as far to say lying. I think that's beyond proving, beyond what I can prove. But I would definitely, me personally, I would definitely say imbalanced in some places, misleading in the hands of certain journalists. So I do largely agree with how these successful vapors would describe media coverage of e-cigarettes. So then we asked people in a free text box, people could write whatever they want. We asked them, what are the main reasons why you started vaping? So we didn't prompt them to say anything or lead them to give any answer. We gave them a fresh sheet of digital paper and said, write as much as you want. What are the main reasons why you started vaping? And to date, we've analysed 1,000 of these text responses because it's a lot of work. So out of 1,000 people, these are the reasons that people say they started vaping. The number of respondents on the right-hand column is the number of people who mentioned this as a reason. So everything above the green line is responses more than 100. And what's interesting is just the variety of reasons why people start. I dare say that if we were to ask them and lead them into saying, did you start vaping in order to quit smoking? You may get 99% of people saying, yes, that's why I started. Or did you start vaping in order to, over concerns about your health? I would just say 90 to 99% would have said yes to that as well. But interestingly, when you don't prompt people, you just ask them a question and leave them to speak their mind, this is largely what they said. So, quitting smoking, concern over health, saving money, and you've heard that e-cigarettes are a safer alternative, all the way down to less frequently mentioned reasons like controlling weight, dental problems, hygiene, and so on. We then asked people what are the main reasons why you continue to vape today, and again there was 21 separate reasons mentioned. The most one being it's a hobby, or I just enjoy it. It's just something I enjoy, and why would I not continue? Obviously, no bad smelling clothes or fabrics, or a good smell from the vapor. No, again, these are people who successfully quit smoking, and many people are saying that they haven't observed any negative health impact, or in some cases their health has improved. So again, why stop? Liking or loving the flavours keeps them away from smoking, improving appearance, being part of the vaping community, and getting to continue a hand to mouth and a puffing ritual. Now again, I should have mentioned at the start of just this section, if you can imagine you are not a vapor, imagine you're just a smoker and you're sitting in the audience, you're just a smoker, you haven't started vaping yet. This is the kind of information that could sway someone just thinking about quitting. And this is really what they're looking for. They're just looking for the testimony, experiences of people who have been there, done it, bought the T-shirt, and it provides them a solid base to make a more informed decision about what they want to do, whether that's continue smoking or switch. So we then asked people, can you please tell us all the things that you enjoy about vaping, as the benefits and pleasures that it brings you? And again, these may resonate with some of you. 18 different pleasures and benefits were mentioned. The flavours are great, improved health, appearance, the hobby factor, rituals, smell of the vapour, and so on, all the way down to social approval. You know, it's more people are more approving of vaping than they are of smoking. And okay, so have you noticed any changes in your health since you started vaping regularly that you attribute to using e-cigarettes? So they were asked to describe any health benefits, health harms that they've personally experienced as a result of vaping, and people mentioned 62 individual harms or benefits. And as you can see from the list, they're mostly benefits. They're mostly improvements in health. So the most commonly reported one being improvements in breathing, opening of the airways, people mentioned a lot, increased stamina, less wheezing or coughing, general health, a sense of taste and smell had returned, and people just feel more, they just have more vitality, more energy about them. As I said, there was 62. I'm not going to go through them all, but there was a list of all the way down to the sort of less common ones. People saying their cholesterol went down, acid reflux, eyes watering, and so. But the main takeaway is the more common ones: breathing improved, more stamina, more energy, and reduced cough. And I hope that if there are people here in the audience who, you know, that this sounds familiar, because maybe that's what they themselves experienced when they switched. And finally, what advice would you give to a person who's thinking about using an e-cigarette as a way of quitting smoking? There was 32 distinct types of advice that people would give. The most common ones being e-cigarettes are the best way to quit. There are other things available. There are patches, there are gums, there are lozenges, but in the experience of this group, using an e-cigarette is the best way to quit. And the other most common one is take time to find the right device. Don't dive in. Find the right device, the right flavour for you. And related to that, there were lots of mentions of, you know, talk to an expert. Don't jump in, just buy something off the shelf. Talk to people who have been there. Talk to people in shops. Talk to people on internet forums. Ask for advice. Because if you were to buy, say, a Nicorette or a patch or of some kind, you wouldn't probably walk into the shop and just buy the first one on the shelf. You would ask a pharmacist and so on. So people are saying that about e-cigarettes. Just talk to people who know what it is they're selling. And just some less frequently mentioned pieces of advice. So I'm going to conclude by summarising the top 9 pieces of general advice that successful vapers want to give to smokers who want to quit and are curious about using an e-cigarette. They're very simple, and this advice applies in many areas of life. Successful vapers say, don't expect miracles. Don't expect to quit on day one. Do what you can do, by which it means don't beat yourself up if you fall down once in a while. Just do what you can do, and that's all anyone can ask of you. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. It's easy for some people, it's hard for some others. Small steps taken with purpose is better than impractical giant leaps. I understand that quitting like that works for some people, but other people need to reduce their cigarettes per day gradually. So as long as you're reducing gradually, that's as that can be as effective as quitting on the spot. If you do smoke, don't beat yourself up. It happens. Just go again. And finally, this is my last slide. Every cigarette less that you smoke is an achievement. Going again after a slip is a bigger achievement. Define yourself by your achievements, not your failures. Don't measure how far you have to go. Measure how far you've come. And always be, and the one that sticks with me is, always be mindful of the harms of smoking that are being avoided by vaping instead. So when you're vaping and you're craving a cigarette, be mindful of what you're not putting into your body at that moment in time. Yes, times may be tough, it may get difficult and distressing, but be mindful of what you're gaining, what you're benefiting from by moving away from tobacco. And this is my final slide, sorry. Just to conclude, the study that we conducted, we wanted to make use of a group of experts on vaping, people who have quit smoking or reduced smoking with an e-cigarette, and take what they've got to say and pass it on to the next generation of smokers who want to quit. And I believe that to dismiss, misuse or underuse vapers' insights and experiences as part of a health services efforts to engage with smokers would be a monumental missed public health opportunity. And I just want to, I'll convey to other public health professionals the potential value of connecting people who are thirsty for advice, encouragement, information, opportunities and understanding about e-cigarettes with the group of vapers who are keen to help smokers turn their quitting aspirations into reality. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Christopher.
Many thanks. I think we have a lot to say about this survey, and we'll continue to deal with that in the following months, in the following weeks, with all the meetings and other surveys. And I just wanted to ask Brice, because in the survey it was, we dealt with, experts, and actually I was wondering, looking at those results, what were, in ages, if you had only, experts convinced, or also an association which welcomes people who wonder about, motivations and ideas and relationship with vape. Well, actually, we have a lot of different profiles inside our association. Could be experts, could be, people starting, but also non-smokers who sustain us, support us because they like our action. So it's quite different, and you have a lot of persons. In fact, in that survey is absolutely excellent because you have you see different things that we do, tell. We've been telling that for a long time, and this is excellent. The questions were very well, asked and very precise, very accurate, and here it was so clear, and you have something very precise, very accurate. So it's very interesting. So in these questions, for example, as we saw, public places prohibition for vapors, but also different subjects we're dealing with today in France, in the Parliament, in the Senate, and in fact we will deal with the prohibition of vaping in public places. But anyway, advertising, according to vapors, does not encourage smokers, but encourages smokers to switch. Yes, we've always said that, in debates, on media, on the radio. We always said that public places vaping will have a lot of consequences, and we showed that through the experience, and we can see that in that data. So that will, of course, create willingness in certain people, and that's obvious. With Philippe, you've been working together on a chart for public places vaping. Philippe, do you think that coexistence between vapors, smokers, non-vapors is possible in public places? Of course, vapors would like to continue vaping. Well, we feel they can do it in a very responsible way, and that coexistence, is that possible? Or as we can hear from some professionals, well, we need to stick to the regulation and prohibition to vaping. Yes, of course, there is, coexistence is absolutely possible, and it is absolutely inevitable. Two examples. First, with vapor, you do not have secondary or side effects, only very, very little quantity in nicotine, so no passive or second-hand vaping first. And then I think the conclusion of this survey is fantastic, because it is an excellent opportunity to have the e-cigarette for quitting smoking. And I would like to say that as far as this, history of public places vaping, it is a political question at the end of the day. And I think the curve of tobacco sales is really, linked to the health ministry, and it's up to them to solve that, because we have a lot of, increase in tobacco products in the sales. So that means a lot of suffering, that means a lot of suicides, and when you have this increase, it means a lot of death and suffering. So I saw a lot of people dying of cancer, lung cancer, so it's terrible. Strokes, and strokes, people who have strokes before 50, it's terrible. It's just appalling, and we leave those people dying. And that to change that, we must change the deal, and we must leave people vaping in the companies, for example. So, and once we have understood that mechanism, vape mechanism, which is totally different from tobacco mechanism, that is okay. And sorry to be maybe a bit, positive on that, but we need to do it. Professor Atta, do you have a question to ask about the motivations of the previous smokers? There is the health problem, but also the economical issues.
Well, first, I'd like to congratulate Christopher for a very original study. I haven't seen data like this yet.
It's quite interesting, and I noted your last point that we should use the vapors in the public health services as teachers or as educators to help people. How do you see that practically? Do you think that the National Health Service is going to hire vapors, or how do you see this?
Yeah, it started from a couple of months ago. We had the idea of asking the question of whether vape shops, where we work, there are 8 or 9 new vape shops on the high street. And we had the question of whether vape shops could be as or more effective in helping people to quit than traditional smoking cessation services. What we were seeing was people going into vape shops, a very positive atmosphere, a lot of hope, a lot of information, the sales assistant spending time with people, 10, 15 minutes, inquiring about their smoking history, their likes and dislikes. And we wondered whether that kind of, and I hate to use the word treatment because I know people don't want to go to the doctors because they don't want to think of themselves as patients, they are consumers. But I wonder if that sort of therapeutic, that environment is more therapeutic than a traditional smoking cessation clinic or talking to a GP. And from that, the idea extends that the people who have lived the experience of quitting smoking and endured withdrawal and at certain times in peaks and troughs and craving are largely better placed to advise a smoker who wants to quit than might a doctor be who hasn't smoked and who's obviously working from guidelines. But I think it matters to the smoker who wants to quit that you're able to identify personally with the person who's advising you. You want to believe the person is credible, and that credibility comes from going through the experience yourself. I realise the irony of this is that I don't smoke, and therefore why should anyone listen to me? But what we hear from both vapors, we hear from vapors is that they're keen to help smokers, and we hear from smokers that they are keen to hear from vapors. So if in an official public health environment there can be a way in which successful vapors can play a role in advising, I think there's something that we should look into to how that we can make that happen. Alongside GPs and other medical professionals, I think it's a really great resource that is sitting there, and as I said, these people want to help, so I think we should make use of them.
Alors, juste avant de vous donner la parole, professeur Etter.
So just before giving you the floor, Professor Etter, because you've got a presentation regarding access to vaping, regarding this point of taking into account the experience of vapers in public health policies, it is an element in France. The Ministry of Health launched a new campaign through Tabac Info Service, a new communication campaign, and vaping is totally absent from it. So maybe to basically add to what Christopher was saying, maybe people do not pay attention enough to vapors. Yes, we can go even further. When I look at the results of the survey that have been presented, what I see is that it's possible to have a true measurement of the impact of the policies. It is possible, and you can see with the figures, make very detailed surveys to understand what the behavior will be, and then quantify, if you do this or that policy, what the results will be. So if you favor vaping, what will be the results in terms of number of people quitting smoking? So you can mobilize public health policies with this kind of surveys and studies, and you've got to do to measure the impact and stop having sterile debate regarding whether vaping can endanger non-smokers. No, you've got to measure the impact. Yeah, regarding the use, you will continue listening to people with this kind of surveys regarding the behavior of the AGES members. Yes, we tried to make a study among volunteers to try and see what the profile of vapors was, but we'll continue to try and understand better the vapors and their expectations. Despite as an activist consumer at the board of directors, we all vape. We've been vaping for 7-8 years. We've got, a good experience of it. but it's very interesting. We'll continue the watch on that. Thank you, Professor Etta. You've got the floor. Thank you. I'm going to stand up. I'd rather speak standing. So I will start my presentations. First of all, thank you, Rémi, to have invited me today. It's a great pleasure to be with you and to see the success of this fair, the extraordinary number of stands, of exhibitors, of visitors. It is a social phenomenon in the field of public health. The fact that a group of users really get to grips with its destiny. It is quite rare to see that. It's something we saw about 20 years ago at the beginning of the epidemics of AIDS, but it's quite exceptional. Yes, we'll see you on YouTube also. So we'll start my presentation by a slide regarding the conflicts of interest. I've got none with the tobacco industry. I haven't received any subsidies from pharmaceutical industry for the last 8 years. 2 years ago, an e-cigarette manufacturer invited me to China, and it was the possibility for me to visit a factory. It was very interesting. So that's the only conflict of interest. Thank you. I always start with this slide because you've got to understand what we're talking about there. It's American data, but it's about the same thing in Europe. We're lagging behind in Europe. But if you look on the left-hand side, for male in the US, the mortality by cancer in the US in 1930, lung cancer was not that frequent. And it's not because people didn't use tobacco at the time. Most men used tobacco but didn't smoke it until the end of the 19th. They either chew it or sniffed it, so there was no combustion. So the problem is not tobacco, but it's combustion. The fact that an innovative technology, the rolling machine, replaced the other forms of tobacco and was followed by this huge burst of lung cancer that has overtaken all other kinds of cancer, and it's possible to get rid of it if you get rid of combustion. So just like Michael Rosson said, people smoke for nicotine, but they die from the tar. So you've got to be able to ensure the intake of nicotine without combustion. So that's a study from the British study, and you can see that 4 times a year there's a survey with 17,000 adults in the UK. It's quite a detailed study where you see that the use of electronic cigarettes in smokers and ex-smokers, people who've stopped smoking for less than a year, increased until 2013, and then it's flat. So why does it stop suddenly? Why is there a ceiling of 20%? For daily users, it's less than 15%. Why? So among smokers, people who continue to smoke whilst using those e-cigarettes, you can see that there's an increase of e-cigarette use until 2013, a reduction of nicotine substitutes. So, 30% use both while smoking. It's quite impressive. And where this data is interesting is that there's no ceiling for ex-smokers, for recent ex-smokers, people who've just stopped smoking. So you can see that the red curve continues to go up. So in the UK, there still is an increase of the use of e-cigarettes in people who've just stopped smoking. It's quite interesting. So it's only in smokers that it reaches a ceiling. And there, again, in our field, I've been working in this field for 20 years, tobacco quitting. It's quite interesting to see that in green, a newcomer, e-cigarette, actually was considered and was more used by any other substitute. So how to explain that suddenly it's flat? I think there are determining factors in the context of society, of laws, of papers. There are obviously factors that are specific to every individual, to their experience of the product, and specific to the products themselves. So those elements of the environment have got an importance. The proportion of smokers in the population, the anti-tobacco campaigns, the status of smokers in your subgroup in society, according to the district where you live, according to your profession. Do people point at you or not? In Switzerland, we also have got e-cigarette laws that are different from the French ones. We can't sell nicotine, but we can import for one's personal use up to 150 milliliters of nicotine product. But there's no vape shop. You will not see, shops, vape shops like in France every 100 meters. And the proportion of vapers in the population is quite different. There are much fewer than in France and in the UK. So it's the regulation that has got a strong impact in this field. And just like we said, press and information with all the press articles. So if we look also at the obstacles for new users, it's very often the case in the US. You see disposable products. If the first use is disappointing because you try a cigarette that is not very efficient, you're not going to continue. So for certain people, there are technical aspects that can be barriers. The products that are most efficient or can be sometimes a bit complicated to use for some people. So it's something to think about, to simplify products for people who do not have the necessary technical skills. For users, there's also the fact that even with new models, they still feel like smoking. So it means they can resume smoking. Sometimes it's not the same experience as with a cigarette, not enough nicotine, sometimes brought to the brain. So this is data that I collected on the internet, not yet published, but I analyzed it this week for you. So 41 people responded. It's not at all a representative sample of people who have started vaping, but they indicate, nevertheless, those 41 people indicated why they started vaping. Or stopped, in fact, using e-cigarettes is because they still crave tobacco cigarettes, and because they relapsed to smoking, and also because they were not supposed to use a substitute whilst they had resumed smoking. It didn't help me quit smoking. I didn't need it anymore because maybe I had stopped everything. I did not like the taste or the flavor. I feared side effects. I was not getting enough nicotine. I did not produce enough vapor. The battery did not last for long. So those are technical aspects. Those are obstacles, the reasons why people stop using e-cigarettes. And those are as many lines of work for manufacturers to have maybe the idea of flavors that may remind people better of what it is to smoke, to have a more efficient battery, etc. Those are negative points published in another survey that is 5 years old. The bad quality of the products at the time was the first negative point raised by the people. The fact that batteries discharge too rapidly, the bad quality of the material. It's evolved, but not for all brands. Side effects, undesirable effects. Is it, well, most of the time it's dry mouth and dry throat, but it's not very frequent, and sometimes it's temporary. But it's the side effect that is the most frequent. Dry mouth and dry throat. So, regarding products, are there possible improvements? Are the products today optimal? And how could they be improved? Maybe the thing is, it would be to find something that could, thanks to which people could have an experience much closer to smoking, to deliver nicotine more quickly, to have a nicotine delivery quick enough to trigger, this feeling of pleasure, like when somebody smokes. So it's pharmacokinetics. It could improve also in different ways, but maybe through the addition of new substances to strengthen the pharmacological effect. So to add substances in the liquids would allow maybe to have something that could be more satisfactory, bearing in mind that it's a sword with two hands, because if you've got something that is more efficient, it will be more addictive. So you've got to but you have to accept to have something that is more addictive if it's more efficient. Could we use other substances that could favor quitting tobacco, like Citizen? Citizen is a substance that is close to Champix, the medication. It's close to nicotine. It's used in Eastern Europe. It's been in use for 50 years. It's sufficient to quit smoking. It's a medicine. It's called Tabex there. So why not use it? There are patents. There are certain Chinese manufacturers that already have got patents to use it in liquids. It could be the use could be made more simple. And we talk about e-cigarettes, but you know that the tobacco industry created other vaping techniques. It's not about only having nicotine in a liquid and to warm it and to heat it up. You've got the Plume product, that's Japanese tobacco, IQOS, that's Philip Morris, Vogue, that's British-American tobacco. It doesn't use electronics or combustion, but a gas technique that uses a chemical reaction. That's also a patent of Philip Morris. So you've got a large quantity of products, especially developed by the tobacco industry. Philip Morris invested $2 billion in this new vape atomizers. So it's got obviously also political consequences, because they've got a very strong political influence. So their marketing strategy and political strategy, their influence on lawmaking, those are pillars of their development. It's something that they announced to their shareholders. So they've got teams of lawyers, of lobbyists that are quite active, that are close to lawmakers, be it in Brussels, Strasbourg, Washington, D.C., to have those products registered. So we saw users do not trust press articles. There's a strong coverage in media, the negative surveys and studies. The risk perceived by the population bears no comparison to the real risk. Because then why vaping if people think that it's as dangerous as smoking? It is a situation where we can wonder what we should do. What should we do? Should we try to educate people, educate journalists, politicians, healthcare professionals? Is it sufficient? Maybe not. Maybe it's a matter of scientific dishonesty. It's an ideological debate. So the public health community is very much divided, and maybe we should work on the root cause of this division. We'll think about it. So to illustrate the fact that the perceived risk bears no relationship to the real risk, there's still the Robert West study. You can see that about half of smokers think that e-cigarettes are just as hazardous as tobacco, as traditional cigarettes, which is wrong, obviously. Not only is it wrong, but this belief is more and more shared. You've got a study that shows here that between 2010 and 2013, fewer and fewer US adult smokers believe that e-cigs are safer than normal cigarettes. And same thing in the UK on the right-hand side. Between 2013 and 2014, you've got an increase of the number of smokers who believe that it is more harmful than traditional cigarettes. There's a problem there when you've got such a proportion of the population that believe something that is wrong. Why? Because of the increase in the negative coverage of e-cigarettes. You've got this publication in this review that analyzed the content of press articles in the US. And between 2009 and 2014, you've got a change in the coverage by the media of the subject, with the grey square, an increase in last year's of the press articles demanding a regulation for the product, a reduction, benefits of e-cigs. In 2014, it's almost down to zero, so no more press articles talking about the benefits, but negative. Number of negative press articles skyrocketed. So that's not an impression. So why? Why e-cigs met such hostility? I believe that at the root cause of it, there's a rejection of this notion of risk reduction. There's the idea that people should abstain, should stop entirely, and it's a rejection of this pragmatic approach to public health. Instead of getting rid of substance that is used by a fourth of the population. It's the wrong enemy that is designated, and people just confused things. People confused combustion, tobacco, nicotine, and people think they're synonymous words. But no, the enemy is combustion. Tobacco itself, especially when it's used like snus, Swedish tobacco, it is tobacco that is not dangerous, or not very dangerous. So you can't say tobacco equals combustion or nicotine equals combustion. It's not true. There was this interesting article also that translates mentality in America of Puritanism, where you should not use any such substances. People aim at purity, but in fact we are in favor of a more pragmatic approach. There's the fact also that from a pragmatic point of view, people who write regulations, very often they're civil servants. They work for governments. There are people who, because of their situation, oppose any risk-taking. What they want when they draft a set of regulations is not to protect the public, but it's to protect their minister from any attacks by the press. And they want to keep their job. Their priority as a civil servant is to keep their job and to continue in his career. And if he takes a risk by being in favor of e-cigarettes, he could put his career at peril. I think it's also an important factor. There's the fact that it's not been invented either by public health professionals. It's a matter of status. I think that public health professionals, physicians, GPs that opposed to it, feel threatened. It's a feeling of being challenged, of their status being questioned. They were Bible before, and suddenly they're like an intruder in the field that they used to consider as their propriety. So there are conflicts of interests also, because it could question their approach to favor vaping instead of conducting the traditional healthcare campaigns or public health campaigns. But there are also conflicts of interests that are not only financial, that are related to the status of the person with the knowledge who's confronted with a newcomer, especially if it's a newcomer that's not academic, because if it doesn't come from the academic environment, university hospitals, you've got a feeling there's it's not my gang, and I've got to stop. Okay. So it means that to overcome this hostility, I think, this hostility in public health, the production of more studies, more surveys and tests is not the only solution. We've got to meet this worry, this fear that relates to the status of these people. Not a solution, but if you don't try to reassure them, to reassure healthcare professionals, if you don't, convincing them that it doesn't question their status, we will not overcome this hostility. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Professor.
Many thanks. We have just a few minutes to give you if you want to intervene, to ask some questions to our speakers. And as far as I'm quite curious, I have a question to Brice in order to come back to Professor Etter's presentation. You've dealt with so many things and challenges, but it's incredible because we have a great vision of the reality of vape. And then we saw the division between products on the one hand and innovation on the other hand, and then the behavior. So my question, Bruce, is, maybe you think it's both, both aspects which are important, for the whole thing. But do you think the product needs to continue evolving, or the smoker has to, get involved and, try to enhance that? So what do you think? According to me, it's more the product which must be innovating and always keep innovating. You know, this was important for liquids, for example. We need to have innovation. Innovation must go and seek those people who want to quit smoking. You know, it's only for those who are willing to quit smoking, of course. But for those people who really want to quit smoking through vape, and thanks to vape, need to find the good solution in order to really enhance that. Do you have any questions? Mr. Depot, many thanks. How legislations can make the choice between a lot of, you know, studies and reports. Some are poor, some are good, some are in favor, some are against. How can you make, you know, your choice and make the distinction? In fact, you're right. We have, we have a difficult situation because in public health, we are like, you know, facing different things. We have very, a lot of studies which have a very poor quality, and you know, also in the American press we saw some of these, and then people stop smoking and then vaping, and then, you know, too early conclusions maybe which were not correct. For example, in fact, for those who produce those studies, they want to create that confusion. That's the point, because then you know, they will create furthermore studies. So it is really a war, actually, and epidemiology is like a weapon, and in a dishonest way, used in a very dishonest way. And really, on both sides, we tend to quote surveys we appreciate and just forget the others that we do not appreciate. So, in fact, you're right. We have like a very strong politician point of view, and we need not, to stick to the reality. Science must really, make its own job. Thank you. As far as the lack of information is concerned, what do you think about the situation in Scotland?
Regarding the new report from Public Health England, do you feel that it can change the situation regarding bad false information?
So it seems these days that the UK is perhaps the most vape-friendly, one of the most vape-friendly countries. When you consider in America, for example, the sheer opposition across the number of states to vaping, it seems like the UK and a lot of our sort of medical organisations and public health organisations have come out in support of encouraging smokers to switch to e-cigarettes, and encouraging medical professionals to support people who want to switch. And that's been fantastic. Unfortunately, as good as the Public Health England report is in terms of clarifying the likelihood that e-cigarettes are at least 95% less harmful than smoking cigarettes, and that was well met by the media, that message was conveyed in the media. Unfortunately, some other researchers have called that into question, which in turn has been picked up by the media. And I feel sorry for smokers who are sitting at home reading a newspaper, reading online news, and one day it says, Public Health England says e-cigarettes 95% less harmful than tobacco, and then the next day are stories about the researchers involved in these studies, how they interpreted the data incorrectly or in a misleading way, deliberately misleading way, and it just confuses people who may be on the verge of giving an e-cigarette a try, and I feel sorry for those people.
Une dernière question, on a le droit.
Okay, last question, please. Good afternoon. I have a question about the impact, the visual impact of today's vaping in France. What is your opinion on the fact that this vaping is very proud, and Edius is very good on that, and thank you for your job. What about the good behavior that which is present, because we do assist to, the biggest cloud, and it seems quite normal. But in the street, when you have, when you create like a cloud, will that make a problem, or create something different or difficult for the vapors? It's new because big clouds. In fact, it's quite new. We did not have that, importance before, and it is important to consider in different ways. I was dealing with that with doctors during a conference, and that idea enabled different people to vape without nicotine, and doctors like that because doctors, work on nicotine, because we know that the problem, the technology will give you the feeling to have nicotine vaping, but it's not. So you need to make a choice, strategic choice, which is quite embarrassing, because I can really, have different weeks without nicotine, but for the image that it has, I cannot use it at work during meetings, because it has a bad impression. It is the hygiene, topic, and there is the cloud, which is very, similar to the smoke. So it is a taboo, and this taboo is still present. So I think it's like a technology which probably will enhance, the future. About that, I wanted to say, for example, in Poland, in Varsavia, we had a conference where you had vapors, but also deciders and very high experts, working in American authorities. And during 2 days, they were exposed to smoke during presentations. And I think it's a lack of education from vapors to have people inhaling, this, and that's terrible. So it is a political lack of consideration, really politically not correct. So I think that we must pay attention to all these aspects, and in conferences like in London next week, or in Poland, as I said, you had deciders, you had experts. It was not a good idea to have people in the middle of all these smokes. So really, we must make a deeper reflection about this. Many thanks for your participation, and we'll meet together tomorrow morning for new conferences and new presentations. Many thanks to you all. Good afternoon.